So the last in the string of holidays is finally past. It is now the year of the dog. What does that mean, and what does the future hold? Next on Jinka Jabo. So yes, Happy New Year. Chúc mừng năm mới. That's how you say it in Vietnamese. And I'm sure that at one point I knew how to say it in Chinese as well as in Korean, but I can't remember it. I keep thinking of how to say it in German or something. Of course, in Germany they don't celebrate the Lunar New Year. I wonder if they do in the Middle East. That's something to consider. Um, Probably not. But Ramadan is based on the moon. Anyway, so that came oddly enough 2 days after, or today, I guess, oddly enough, 2 days after Valentine's Day. And so, as a single person, you rush through the holidays. You get hit first with, what family you're spending time with, or who are you going to eat dinner with on Thanksgiving. And then you have Christmas and New Year's, and then another New Year, which usually comes forward. It usually comes before Valentine's Day, and then Valentine's Day, and then then all the seasons are kind of brushed out of the way. All the holidays are kind of over with for the time being, at least in Eastern calendars and in the American calendar. But for me, I am looking forward to something very important that's going to happen in 2 weeks, 2 Fridays from now. And that's something that I have waited at now, 11 years, or no, not 11, 9 years and 50 weeks I have waited to open this letter that I wrote to myself 10 years ago. Let's see if we can get a sight of that. You see, I said I was going to read this letter, and I was looking forward to having someone to read it with. I had assumed that by now, as we've said with Valentine's Day behind us, I'd assumed by now that I'd have a family or a partner to share it with. But instead, it looks like it's just going to be me and you, whoever you are, whoever is watching this. I think I'm going to read this letter to myself on camera so I can share it with somebody, at least somebody. But I should give you some background on the letter. It was about 10 years ago that I just went through a very difficult time, and I was questioning my career, and I was questioning where I lived, and people that I knew and loved were moving away. And this is back when I lived in northern Wisconsin. And the winter was very cold and brutal. I remember that particular winter was quite bad. And I was just very stressed out and having a lot of problems. And it looked like my life, it might come to an end. I was seriously contemplating suicide. I was seriously thinking about my own death. And long story short, I wound up in the hospital at one point. And I had nearly died, but I don't know. As I mentioned Pastor Conway before, he said something interesting, that there really is no such thing as a near-death experience. You're either living or you're not. But anyway, I took that experience, and I sat down in the hospital, and I wrote myself a letter, and I said, in 10 years, I'm going to give myself 10 years. If things do not improve, then I'll have this discussion again, and I'll see if it's really worth checking out. I'll see if it's really worth staying around and being here, when it felt back then that I really didn't have much of anything. Now, looking back, almost 10 years later, I could see that I was very wrong about a lot, and I'm glad that I've given myself this time. But the years have not gone in the way that I thought they would go. It's really been, it's just been an odyssey. That's the only word for it. Just as, picking up Ulysses 12 years ago, I got really restless, and I felt like there was a creative spirit within me that wasn't being manifested, and there needed to be something. And as much as I liked working with the elderly and doing the charitable work that I once did as a social worker, I just felt a yearning for adventure. And one of the patients that I had was a World War II veteran. and he was one of the boys that was stationed in Okinawa and waiting for the call to go to invade Japan, which would have cost, I remember hearing, it would have been 1 million lives of soldiers. And he got the call that he wasn't going to have to go, that the war was over after the bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I remember that because I remember that conversation especially because it was shortly after this happened, shortly after I wrote myself this letter, that I'd said that I was going to take off. I was going to go on my odyssey. And when one of the first places I went was Hiroshima, one of the first of many. It would have been about a year after that conversation I had with him, before I left the nursing home, before I went on my own to do my own thing. In this 10 years, I've been around the world twice, I think. I've been back to Europe, and I've been to Ireland, and I've been to the Middle East and to Asia now 3 or 4 times, all over Eastern Asia. And I'm so glad that I got a chance to do all this, because that's one thing that I do remember. I've been racking my brain trying to remember what I wrote in this letter almost 10 years ago. And one of those things is that I would travel the world, and that I would see all the things that I'd always wanted to see. And that's pretty much come true. I feel like although there are still many places that I would love to see, I'd love to see Mexico and Israel and Australia and a bunch of other places. I feel like I've kind of met my own quota. Same thing with my education. As nice as it would be to go back and get a PhD, I feel like I've gone far enough. I made it further than I thought I would, so that was enough. But the one thing, and this ties in with Valentine's Day, as I sat a couple days earlier playing Oh My Love, I thought to myself, next year there's going to be someone with me. I won't be alone. I won't spend another Valentine's Day alone, because I have for so many of these 10 years. Not all of them, but most of them, I would say, I was alone. And so that's going to change. And it's the year of the dog, so I feel like a dog in heat. I am hungry like a dog. And it makes me think, in the year of the cock, the year of the rooster, I felt the same way, and I went on dates and stuff. But it was, that's really where things turned around, where I realized that there would be no more thoughts. There would be nothing preventing me from finding the true goal, and that is to find someone to marry. That is to have my own family, because I feel like I've reached the point where I'm old enough finally. I've done it all, man. And looking back at this last 10 years, I think, I've seen enough. I'm ready to begin living now. I remember when I wrote it thinking, I'm going to be 33, turning 34. That feels so old, but really now it's just like my life is only beginning, and I'm becoming aware of that in some beautiful ways. The year of the dog. It's only been 1 day into the year of the dog, but I already feel completely different. And I feel like it's going to be a good year, and I'm going to keep howling, and I'm going to keep fighting to get what I want. And whoever she is, you might see this, and I just want you to know that I'm ready, and I'm waiting, and I am looking. I am looking for you. And that is what the year of the dog will mean. And that's really the main goal that I have. Apart from, of course, the usual, gotta find a job, gotta do all this, gotta be an adult somehow. It really isn't that easy. But it's not that hard either. And the goal I had for this last 10 years, this goal, was that I wanted 10 years from when I wrote this letter to be a time when, no matter what was going on in my life, I could still sit down and smile and be happy, and I realized that everything was worth doing, and things would be okay. And it reminds me of the lyrics to a Dar Williams song. She is a folk singer, an American folk singer that I've liked since I was a kid. And her song, After All, got me through this hard time. And the lyrics go something like this. When I chose to live, there was no joy. It's just a line I crossed. I wasn't worth the pain my death would cost, so I was not lost or found. And I think that really sums it up. The choice was made, and I don't think that choice will change. The choice was made 10 years ago that I would keep living and that I would keep fighting to make my life meaningful and worthwhile. But it wasn't a moment of instant joy, and there hasn't been that satori, there hasn't been that turning around. But understanding that and taking an honest review of my life so far, I feel like the important things have changed, and that I now have the tools to get everything that I need and to really make a difference and to really give meaning and beauty to the world around me. And that's my goal. My goal is to help. My goal is to be here. My goal is to open up. And I know that this year, in the year of the dog, my heart is already open, and things are going to change, and there's going to be a lot of beauty and transformation in the weeks and in the months ahead. Thank you for listening to Jinkajabo. Peace.